Governments have the most basic right to protect its citizens. By the time, if few rights do not matter anymore, what matters is the overall social stability. If social unrest really erupts into chaos and instability, more rights would be harmed anyways. This is where the governments step out. If they fail to intervene during periods of civil unrest by shutting down the deterioration progress brought by the internet, then they have truly let down their own citizens' face. Motto here: we support giving the legal authority to governments to be able to implement temporary shutdowns during periods of significant civil unrest. By civil unrest, we refer to situations where there are serious breakdowns of public order, such as large-scale riots and also widespread violence beyond peaceful protests. First of all, the threshold is the government must have reasonable evidence that unrest political issues involved or are likely to involve significant violence, and that digital communication is actively pouring oil into the fire, such as coordination of riots or spreading of information. This looks like back in 2020, misinformation about treatments of COVID spreading on the internet. Unlike mass shutdowns of the internet because of political reasons, the Bangladesh student protests in 2024, what we support rather is shutdowns of internet to areas that had been proved to have civil unrest, in which case international organizations could possibly measure and standardize those. Second of all, on scope, shutdowns must be temporary and geographically targeted where possible. This means that they are limited to the duration of the unrest and must be lifted whenever stability is restored. This is not a permanent nationwide ban on the internet, so opposition cannot simply strawman us. Third of all, accountability. This decision must be subject to post-host review, largely judicial, in order to ensure that the power is not abused and was proportionate to the threat, as we had mentioned, unlike the one of the Bangladesh student protest in 2024. Now moving on to our arguments. First argument on how the internet would be able to accelerate and scale violence, how it changes the nature of civil unrest by making it larger and faster and more coordinated than ever. On the internet, there is often echo chamber effects, where people with the same or similar opinions are brought together through data analysis. This often leads to cases where people gather, share thoughts, but later deteriorates because of the strong resonance. Social media and messaging apps drastically lower the barriers to organizing large groups. A single viral post that contains extreme views or a video can simply mobilize thousands of people almost instantly. We tell you that in this case, extreme ideas often spread at a super fast rate. This often leads to echo chamber effects, as we had said. Algorithms on platforms usually keep users engaged by showing them content that matches their interests or matches their taste. As a result, people with similar opinions cluster together. And in this case, these echo chambers become more extreme as users mainly see content that confirms their worldview rather than encounter or opposing their perspectives. They can gradually deteriorate since that strong emotional resonance, especially around the topics such as politics and also on social instability, can push these groups towards even more instability and even more extremist views than ever before. This often creates two impacts here. First of all, on rapid escalation, since that incidents that might have remained local are amplified into widespread outrage within minutes, possibly spreading to the whole world before even having for example, the web police to be able to restrict that before authorities have any time to verify and check. And second of all, on real-time coordination, where individuals can self-organize movements, share locations, or avoid law enforcement, which makes it extremely hard to control under time. This often means, for example, anonymous forums, and also group chat where they can be used to share specific locations or targets in real time. People who have never met in person can act as a tightly coordinated group. First, because of two reasons. First of all, they have met together online and they have a coordinated view. And second of all, they can be anonymous, making it very hard for the police to simply find them anyways. These situations, which might have been manageable in the first place if it has been physical, would be unmanageable with the help of the internet, and violence spread much more quickly and affect larger populations. This means that if the civil unrest is out of control for once, the impact is a mass scope of people here. Second argument on how misinformation drives irrational behavior and thus hurts more people. But before I go on, any points of information? Okay, scene nine. Then moving on to our second argument on how misinformation drives irrational behavior and how it hurts people. In these moments, we do believe that people's emotions are already heightened, which means that they are more likely to believe or share information. First of all, misinformation often spreads faster than the verified facts. People may just have like extremist views, and that is eye-catching to many. That means like algorithms are likely to push it towards more people. In this case, thousands of posts or like thousands of likes could be conducted without even having the web police or such authorities to be able to check them. Algorithms always reward the content that generates strong reactions, and they don't quite like verify whether it's for example like misleading or whether they are fake news or not. We do believe that misinformation are more likely to stick in people's minds, since that people are likely to believe from sources they feel that they're emotionally connected to. This makes individuals vulnerable to believing and acting on information that has never been properly verified, but they have emotional resonance with. So these false beliefs often mobilize people into action. So this looks like individuals who believe they're under threat are far more likely to engage in aggressive or preemptive behavior. Crucially, we think that this information spread faster than the real fact-check information, since our fact checks cannot really keep up with the spread of wrong information that is more emotionally appealing to people. The result is that people do not act rationally. They will rush into social movements without even making clear of the facts. Shutting down the internet would break the cycle of deterioration and would be able to protect people from civil unrest. And thus, we're very proud to propose. Thank you.
Prime Minister has painted a terrifying picture. So, like, the internet is a wildfire spreading violence, misinformation, and chaos at an impossible speed. So, like, they argued that to save lives, government should cut the internet. But we say, like, this is not a solution. This is a surrender to fear. So the internet does not cut civil unrest. The internet is how people stay safe, and they seek help, how they verify truth and how societies function. So in my speech, I proved that shutting down the internet destroys the life of ordinary people and pushes societies into deeper chaos. So the impact is catastrophic and it is unnecessary. So in my speech, I'll first make 3 new points, then do refutation on PM and conclusion. So my first argument is the internet is the lifeline of society. So first it's like dismantle the government core assumption, so that the internet is a threat to be shut down. It is not. So it is the foundation of modern life. So when the government shuts down the internet, they do not stop protesters. They stop hospitals. So like they stop ambulance from assessing patient records, and they help stop doctors from saving lives. So like in a real crisis, a single minute without connectivity can mean the difference between life and death. So they stop schools, and students cannot attend classes, assess learning resources, or stay connected to teachers. So a whole generation will lose education during a really vulnerable time. So they stop communication, and parents cannot call their children to save their face. So the victims cannot call for help, and the ambulance cannot coordinate response. So the basic sense of security is wiped out. So the government claims that the internet fuels violence, but what they really do is cut off the only way people can protect themselves. So this is not protecting the public. This is abandoning them. So the impact is not small. It is really life-changing. Is really life-changing and a social cut down. And my second point is that government inability and the rise of chaos. So let us analyze what the government actually achieves by cutting the internet. So the Prime Minister argues that the internet will fuel violence and create echo chambers, but like their solution is like a failure. So it only harms the innocent. Violent groups use like APPs and some so the government will shut down the only cuts like of peaceful protesters, students, and ordinary citizens who are like trying to stay safe. So like so the moment the internets are cut down, like the violent groups, like they can use these APPs, so they are not affected at all. And the only people harmed are the peaceful and vulnerable, like ordinary civilians. So the policy is not about stopping violence, it's about like silencing the public. And like there will be many information into like rumors will explode. So with no official updates, people will be fill the silence with fear. So rumors spread faster than violence, and like this could be even more dangerous than it is before. So like a government cannot communicate with like its people during a crisis. It's a government that has like already lost control. So you cannot fix unrest by making your people feel abandoned. You cannot solve tension by cutting their connection to truth. Though like the policy turns into like public anger into like public distrust and makes peaceful situations really, really violent. And now I'll move on to refutation. So like first to claim that the internet accelerates violence is wrong. So the internet does not create violence, but reveals tension that already exists. So problems like inequality, public like brutality, and social injustice are the cause of unrest, not social media. So the government acts as if the internet invented protest. It did not. So people protested long before Facebook. So if without the internet, peaceful people will lose the ability to organize safety, share information, and avoid danger. So second, like their echo chamber argument is misleading. So yes, like it shows a similar context, but the internet also allows people to concur like diverse views. So it lets like marginalized voices speak out. If like it lets like truth spread. So the government act as if the internet is a machine that like is a one-sided view. And third, they say misinformation spread faster than facts. So this is true. Like but the solution is not to cut the internet. So the solution is to verify, to like fact check, and to share more reliable sources. So shutting down the internet does not stop like fake news. It can stop like people from finding like real news. So like the government asks you to so like fourth, they claim that people are more likely to believe lies when emotions are high. So true, but like cutting the internet can make people more emotional because like they're left in the dark. But like they will like fill the silence with a fear, so they will panic and they will turn small tensions into really large violence. So government solution is worse than the problem. So like now, like government asks you to give them a power to cut off the internet, but the internet does not protect. So it does not control, it does not fix. So it could actually destroy all those things. So that's all proud to propose.
Debates about rights are the easiest in times of peace. Therefore, I can safely conclude that this round is not about peace. It is about what governments should do when society begins to break down. Therefore, we're proud to propose. I will be doing two things in my speech. First is reputations, then on extensions to my partner. First, let me directly respond to opening opposition because their entire case rests on a very idealized view of how the internet functions during civil unrest. Before that, a clarification that phone calls are not part of the internet, so no worries on that. They tell you that the internet is a lifeline, that it helps people to stay safe and to verify truth and somehow access help. But this only holds in normal conditions where information is extremely reliable and where institutions are trusted by the people. But we tell you that in moments of civil unrest, those conditions all break down because what we see instead is not careful verification of information, but rapid spread of of unverified and emotionally charged information. This means that people are not calmly checking sources under opposition's world. They're reacting to fear and anger and urgency. So when they say that the internet helps people to verify truth, it is simply not how people behave in crises, because in reality, the internet would amplify people's confusion. But second, on your claim that the internet is a lifeline that keeps people safe, right? I think that this misunderstands where safety actually comes from for these people, because safety in these situations come from restoring order and reducing violence, but not to maintain like unlimited communication that is actively contributing to escalation. Because even if some individuals use the internet for them to seek help, at the same time, others are probably using it to coordinate harm or to spread panic among people and intensify the unrest. So the question is not whether the internet has benefits to people, but the question is whether in these specific moments where there is social unrest, those benefits would outweigh the systematic harm that it creates on scale. We have shown that they do not. They also argue that shutting down the internet would let us abandon the vulnerable people, and parents cannot contact children, victims cannot call for help. I think this is a false comparison, because in their world, the same internet that they rely on is also enabling the very violence that cuts people at risk in the first place. So it means that keeping the internet does not guarantee safety for these people. It often increases the likelihood that those individuals are in danger to begin with. But in our world, where the solvency is a temporary disruption in communication, the broader effect is where we create a reduction in violence and instability, which we ultimately create a safer environment for everyone, including the vulnerable groups that both sides aim to protect. But finally, they claim that bad actors will simply bypass these restrictions and the only ordinary people are affected. But even if some actors find alternative means, what matters is that we are significantly reducing the scale and spread of coordination overall. This means that civil unrest is not driven only by highly organized groups, but it's driven by large numbers of ordinary individuals that are reacting quickly and collectively. By disrupting the main infrastructure that they rely on, we reduce the stability for unrest to grow and spread. So it means that even if the solvency is not perfect, it's still highly effective in limiting escalation, which is that is most important in these situations. Now, on the issues of rights, and why short-term restriction is justified, right? Opposition tells you that shutting down the internet violates their expression and democratic participation. But I think this only works if we assume that in the internet, in moments of civil unrest, is functioning as a space for rational discourse. But this is false, because in these moments, the internet does not primarily enable thoughtful democratic engagement, because it amplifies fear and misinformation. This is what is being protected on their side. That is not the ideal speech or freedom of expression, but it's a form of communication that is actively contributing to instability. The first point that I want to rebuild on is the quality of rights exercised in their world is already degraded. It is not meaningful in democratic participation, but often harmful in escalation. But second, right, rights are only valuable when these conditions that sustain them to exist. In these situations where unrest is spiraling, with violence increasing, and where public safety is breaking down, the ability to safely exercise any right, whether it's the freedom to speech or protest or participation, would also begin to collapse. So even if opposition is correct that we restrict a right in the short term, we're doing so in order to prevent the end conditions that make those rights possible in the long term. Just to rebuild and extend the PM's first argument on coordination, right? What matters is not just that the internet allows for coordination of people, but that the scale and precision of that coordination. Let me reinforce what my prime minister have already told you about coordination. Even if you fully accept their analysis, what matters is the level of control that the state loses in these situations. Because once coordination happens at this speed and scale, the state is no longer dealing with isolated cases of whether individuals are spreading. It is dealing with a fluid and constantly shifting network of actors that cannot predict or contain in time. The impact is that enforcement becomes very effective because police and emergency services are always
Hi, Jessica. You muted yourself.
Oh, okay, sorry. I can start again at this point.
I paused you at 4:50, so you have around 2 minutes and 25 seconds left.
Okay. Okay, so I will start in 3, 2, 1. So even under their own argument, the consequence is not small-scale disruption, but also the systematic issues. For example, we cause systematic instability. But second, on the point about misinformation, my prime minister have already shown you that misinformation spreads rapidly. This means in practice that people are making decisions based on distorted or entirely false realities. The impact of this is that the harm becomes more likely and more extreme because people who believe that they or their communities are under threat are far more willing to engage in preemptive or retaliatory kind of violence. But more importantly, once these harm occur, it cannot simply be undone by anyone. Even if the truth emerges later, the violence has already happened, which means that the damage has already taken place and that the distrust between communities still persists. So this is not about the confusion of certain people in the moment, but it's about creating the long-term divisions or cycles of conflict that would extend far beyond this initial unrest. Last, I want to weigh on both sides' best and worst case. On opposition's best case, they tell you that keeping the internet preserves freedom. So even now look at our world, right? In our worst case, we temporarily restrict access to the internet. This limits people's ability to communicate or to organize, but the harm is time-bounded and reversible. So once stability is restored and access returns, individual will regain full ability for them to exercise their rights again. Therefore, never prouder to propose.
Shut down the internet actually give government a chance to hide the truth, and the citizens in their country cannot actually get the true information. Even if in the government side, they shut down the internet, they cannot get the true information. So in my speech, I will first do some rebuting and refutation towards the opening government side, and I will then do some extension. So first, some responses to Deputy Prime Minister. She actually reviewed our side by saying that in our side, we cannot actually get the true information because a lot of people on the social media are actually emotional. So I want to say that in your side, it can actually, even if in our side we cannot get the true information, but at least we can get like some information like on different on different people, right? But in your side, you can just get the information from the government. So your side cannot actually get the true information too. And our side, as my partner actually explained, if you shut down the internet, there will be rumors that spread pretty fast, and your side too. So in your side, actually, we just get the information from the government, and a lot of people will actually starting to spread rumors because you cannot actually get more information, right? So the rumors will be spread more easily, and in your side, the people who actually like didn't actually trust the government can spread more. No, thank you. Can actually spread more rumors and make the citizens more panic. So in your side, even if in our side we cannot get the true information, but we can get lots of different information online. But in your side, you can just get the information from the government, and it will actually create more rumors, and the citizens will be more panic. And second, Deputy Prime Minister also talked about we want to reduce violence, and it's also about the people online and misinformation. I like to say that this point is pretty good, but I think as I actually explained, and your side there will be more rumors. So next, respond to the Prime Minister. She talks about echo chamber and it spread extreme information pretty fast, and I think that's the main point of the government side. So we can actually use, let's compare it again, Judge. So, no, thank you. So, and their side, they actually just get the information from the government. But on our side, even if the people online are emotional, but on our side, we can get different information. And in this kind of situation, the people needs to know more different information. They need to know how to protect themselves, not just get the information from the government. And also because of this, the government can hide the truth, because sometimes the government didn't want the citizens to know something. For example, they kill the leader of the organization who oppose their policy, or they actually do some bad thing towards the citizens. So they actually the government can actually lie to the citizens and make the citizens believe them. So we don't want them to hide the truth, Judge. In this case, the most important thing for the citizens is know what is exactly happening in their country and how to protect themselves. And also if the government actually hide this kind of things, and then if and their side, if the internet actually begin to work again, if some people actually spread this kind of information that tells us, oh, government hides some truth from the citizens, it will actually makes the trust between the government and the citizen collapse, right, Judge? And we also want to tell you that no, thank you. And we also want to tell you that and their side's cases shut down the internet means a lot of citizens will get hurt because they don't know how to protect themselves, and also a lot of citizens cannot experience education and also healthcare, as my partner already explained. So because of all of that reason, proud to propose. Thank you.
So first, I would like to start off by characterizing the whole debate. So throughout this entire debate, no team has been able to clearly characterize how social media without the policy will work out. Like, there are quick mentions, but we believe there's no clear characterization. Some things we need to acknowledge is that how the basic algorithms of like social media and how it works will not be changing significantly. So people who gain like the most streams, comments, and likes, they gain control of social media. And those who can cause stirs in public opinion are likely the ones that can dominate the entire landscape, can affect how people think, because controversy, it sparks discussion, and discussion creates more tension, and it causes more control of the social media and more control of public opinion. So in this case, it is comments and actions about certain controversial social events that creates the most like public unrest, public opinion, etc., as it's the center of all attention regarding social unrest. So other like small normal things, however, will be suppressed as social media, people on social media do not like pay attention to these issues during big events of civil unrest. Now moving on to our extension. We believe that the ability of the internet to gain information and spread this information will cause an exponentially will exponentially hinder police actions, which hinders police ability to actually restore stability during events of major civil unrest. So we believe unregulated internet access, it basically allows these hostile groups to monitor police movements in like real time through the internet. So basically through social media, and like there are things like live stream, there are messaging apps, there are location sharing, etc. And these people who are rioters, maybe they're hostile groups, etc., they can track where the officers are deployed. They can check where the specific police vehicle is, which routes they'll take, and how they can plan to respond. So we believe this completely undermines the safety and like effectiveness of police operations, because it poses basically a huge scale and convenient resistance. So this means there will be a digital advantage for these specific hostile groups and these specific social groups that actually causes civil unrest and actually like undermine police trying to stop like certain issues and trying to solve the civil unrest. So basically the police, they'll lose the operational space that is actually needed to de-escalate the tensions quickly and safely without like being ambushed, being surrounded, or being forced into like unnecessary confrontation. So we believe like some examples could look like police vehicle is tracked, is monitored like online on the internet, and there are roadblocks set up beforehand to block police vehicles, affect the police, or perhaps like police roadblocks are shared on the internet, and like basically these hostile groups, they just run away rather than running into these roadblocks and actually effectively stopped by the police. So now moving on to comparative analysis. Why is our impact exclusive? The reason is that only we remove this tactical advantage from violent groups. So like things like live streams, location sharing, etc., that we have mentioned before, they give rioters an asymmetric advantage over the law enforcement of the police. So basically, like in the status quo, the police movement is fully transparent to rioters via like live stream, like the lots of information shared online, like GPS sharing, etc. With this temporary shutdown, we believe it will look like the police can maneuver through the city. They can enforce laws. They can enforce like more safety without being warned, without being tracked online. And also, in the status quo, we believe there will be high injury risk, which can be cut down by the temporary shutdown. For example, like there may be ambushes on police. There may be like surrounding police and targeted attacks on specific police vehicles, which we believe will be significantly lowered if the temporary shutdown of the internet. So also there will be high instability as basically like the process of actually enforcing law and solving the civil unrest will be lengthened. So basically, the police has to like pursue the criminal, the riot groups for a longer time. They cannot like immediately enforce the law, etc., which we believe can be automatically solved with the temporary shutdown when basically the criminals they lose this tactical advantage, which is the internet, which means that police will be able to shorten the process and actually contain the violence within hours or days. So opening opposition tells you a few things. They tell you that like there will be like the crucial life-saving networks will be blocked and that there will be biased government news. So we believe we'll flip their like mitigatory responses. So first, they talk about like blocking crucial life-saving networks. So opening government also mentioned this. We believe that the framing here is like actually a straw man and it is fundamentally unfair. So like blocking like the internet, it does not automatically mean that like phone calls, etc., messaging will be blocked. And also we flip this mitigatory response of biased government news. So let's say even in the worst case scenario, we fundamentally believe that the government is incentivized to stop civil unrest and control like main things like disinformation, etc., that will actually cause the public to be scared, to like flee, to like basically like create more fear and fear mongering during these issues of civil unrest. So we believe that basically the government is just obligated to protect its citizens among these like dangerous, scary things to like protect them from actually being afraid and causing more civil unrest in these issues. So like, but whereas on their side, where the internet is basically just like uncontrolled, like people are easily affected by different sources of information and they're not protected by like the government at all. So and all in all, we believe this is the end of our speech.
So in debate, I'm gonna go into a few sectors. So the first one, I'll go over some refutations, and now I'm going to do some extensions. So firstly, for the refutations, other opponents from the closing of government have said about internet of tracking, for example, like the police station. As the opposition side, we will want to highlight that a lot of those protests, there will be definitely police or a lot of other armies and stuff that's actually gonna keep everyone safe, even though there might be people being killed or being like it might be having a lot of harms. However, there will be definitely still polices or, for example, a few people that's maybe even like much more well trained going to support or even keep the government safe. And so we believe that using internet to track for the police station, there's absolutely no use for this. And moving to the extension first, and if I have time, I'll continue some refutations. So as the opposition side, we want to highlight about how we could actually, there's like a lot of like VPN stuff that even if the government actually don't allows them to have, for example, or cut down the internet, they could actually still use VPN to actually speak out and actually speak to the other peoples, even though the government had cut out. A good example is, for example, right now, even though the government the Chinese government actually restrict the people, for example, using YouTube or a lot of different apps, people could still use VPN to actually access to all those apps, and there's definitely no use of actually cutting them. And moreover, we also want to highlight about how is there a POI?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if crowds can coordinate and move in real time online, how exactly are police supposed to keep up with constantly shifting targets?
I didn't really quite understand your question, but if you meant by for example, how if they're using the for example, using the internet to track the police, I don't think we really said that. We're only refuting on the government side for the closing. So continue for my arguments for, like, for example, the confident risk. We want to actually say, for example, if the government is actually, for example, harming people on the bad ways, then if we actually have internet, it's definitely going to be more fair to people, for like the protesters and also for people who actually need to know the truth. If we close down the internet, it will cause, for example, government using violence to those protesters, then they could actually not be able to speak out. And this is also a good example. No, this is also a good example of, for example, if you actually don't cut down the internet, then it will actually causing of that a lot of people could actually know the truth, and everyone outside this part that's actually protesting, they might also know how people is harmed or what did the government do right or wrong, and they could actually become a more fairness of our opinion. And we also want to clarify that if, for example, you actually let people use internet, it will not give on the bad side, because, for example, people, they could actually know that why this is happening, this, or what they could actually do for the other countries to do to no, if there's actually going to be ways that they could improve later on, and also they could actually know what is happening. And also for a lot of protesters later on, they might don't know a lot of the problems that are happening in maybe another city in this country or in the other part of the city. And using internet and also the government allowing them, it could be able to let or allow those protesters to know what is the happening and what is the situations right now. We also want to clarify that if, for example, the government, they're actually allowing us to use internet or not going to cut down the internet, it could actually allow the fairness for the protesters and also the government. Because, for example, if the government, they actually cut down the internet, then they will actually not be able to let a lot of protesters tell what the people is doing, and the government might give a lot of false informations, and this is actually much more important to a more of like a democracy country, or also to a lot of countries which is a situation of a lot of protesting, and actually a lot of people outside this place actually could not know what is going to happen later on. No. Also for some more rebuttals, we also want to rebut how opponents have said about the group of misinformation or sharing. However, even if we cut down the internet, it will still happen a lot of misinformations, and they will also cause a lot of problems. For example, like the government tells a lot of bad things about the protesters and all the negative side, and they're saying the positive side about themselves and what they done great to the society and what they had improved to the other peoples. However, this will cause people not being fair, and this will also cause a lot of people having misinformation, leading it to causing other bigger situations of people believe that it's actually all the protesters' fault, which it is actually maybe the government's problem of not having a good security or a lot of different things that might happen. And they also said about how if there's a group of unfamiliar peoples, and then they might have group targets. However, we also want to say that this is not possible if we closed it will not even happen if we don't close down the internet, because people nowadays, even though if there isn't a like civil unrest, or if there is like even there isn't any people protesting, there might still be people from online that might target another group for no reasons. And we also want to clarify that even judge if we had actually not close the internet, it will actually make people feel much more safer in our world, which they were actually having the fairness and also having the truth for also people outside this country, but also for on the other side, which is the government side, it will actually have a situation of people who actually they don't know the truth and they cannot actually know what is happening right now, and the government might use the rights that they're not supposed to use. Thus, we're proud to oppose. Thank you.
I'd like to start off with some refutations to the entire opposition bench. So first of all, going on to opening opposition, they talked about how, first of all, the government is acting as if social media is like the cause for social unrest, protests, which is untrue. They give us a sentence, and this is kind of quoting, people have been protesting long before Facebook. But we think, Judge, that doesn't actually target our case directly at all, because this is a very clear analogy, like an intuition check. For example, a thief is the one who causes like a crime, theft in the first place. But however, a car isn't actually the thing that actually like steals the stuff the thief stole. But the car, for example, is the thing that actually enables the thief to get away from the crime scene. It actually enables them to worsen the impact because they are able to escape like police judgment and police catching them, for example. We don't think that just because something doesn't cause an issue that it cannot be specifically bad or harmful. We think that it's very mitigatory and cheerful in their sense. But also they talk about how the internet will allow for the voices of marginalized groups, which is particularly important in social unrest in cases like that, because everybody needs to be heard. They need to know that they are heard. Number one, we believe that there is no clear characterization from the entire opposition bench, or at least rebuttal to our characterization of how social media is going to work during periods of social unrest. We say that the main algorithms of social media, which Oji kind of briefly mentioned, but we extend on way more, is not going to be significantly different, because we think that those who can gain controversy, those can actually start people discussing an issue, are the ones who are always going to get all of the attention, all the streams, likes, etc., etc. Whereas normal things, for example, even in real life, where you post like a picture of your daily life, it's not going to raise as much of an influence as somebody discussing, for example, a war that's currently happening in society. And in cases with social unrest, we think that discussing the social unrest, which is basically the center of all attention inside like a country or a region, is going to be one who gains all attention. Marginalized groups will be, shall not be, and will never be able to actually get their voices out, get their voices to be heard by the majority of the public. They also say the solution to, for example, spreading misinfo online is actually to verify information. However, number one, they never clearly specify whether it's the government verifying this information or is it the people verifying this information. But we are able to target both of these. Number one, if they say that the solution is actually for the government to verify all information online, we think that this is, first of all, just untrue. It will take a huge amount of resources because the government basically has to put all their resources onto mitigating this social unrest instead of, for example, just making sure that all information online are going to be correct. The more convenient and more strategic way is basically to block out social media. But also, if they say that the solution is to actively like encourage people to verify their information, for example, we simply do not see what is the mechanism behind that, how the government or which actor in this case can be able to like persuade all people to verify information. Governments, for example, and like organizers in social media, like big companies in social media, have been encouraging people to verify information online. And this also works with things like AI for decades since social media has come out. Yet misinformation is still very widely, for example, spread on social media. We don't think that social unrest, and especially under a time of social unrest, this policy that has failed for decades is suddenly going to basically succeed. They finally talk about how cutting the internet will make people feel even more emotional because they are left in the dark. They don't actually know any information about like what is going on in like society as a general whole. However, we think that number one, even with the internet going on, it is not necessarily true that people are able to feel like people are going to be entirely leaving out of the dark. They are still probably going to be in the dark for some cases because, like we said, social media works by, for example, having people with the most controversy controlling all of the information information. As a result, it is always going to be those who can actually, for example, focus on social unrest and focus on, for example, the public opinions that most people are going to, for example, agree with, that get all of the attention. That is how social media works. Biased information and people being left in the dark is always going to exist. But secondly, we don't think that, for example, people will feel essentially they're being left in the dark significantly without social media, because once, first of all, they're kind of strawmanning us on the impact that like everybody is not going to be able to communicate with each other, which we say is just untrue, because we're only blocking the internet. We're not blocking things like daily communication, and we're not blocking things like my partner said, things like for example, messaging each other in things like Snapchat, which doesn't even actually, for example, have a really large like social media influence. But also, we think that even if they are to assume that all of these things like WeChat or so are going to be blocked out, we think that in this case, people, they will probably turn to like communicating with each other. For example, they will not think that they will be left in the dark, because they are still able to acquire information in things like newspapers, and there are still always going to be like broadcast shows from the government. If the government isn't going to issue any information, the public aren't fools. They can tell the government that, oh, we want information, we want you to tell us what's happening, which has already happened in, for example, a lot of riots. But moving on to closing opposition, number one, they say that there will be the police keeping like the government safe. So using social media to track the police is just not going to happen. It's not really even useful. First of all, number one, we don't see the logic chain. But secondly, there are countless historical examples in which people have been tracking the police. For example, Hong Kong protests in 2019 used like Telegram channels to broadcast everything. Yes?
Isn't it you guys that was saying about how you guys are using internet to track the police and stuff?
Yeah, and you said it's not going to be useful, which we're kind of rebutting right now. So we give you examples like the Hong Kong protests in 2019, which I actually experienced because it caused like a bit of societal like backlash and like basically controversy at the time. The 2011 UK BlackBerry riots, in case any of you noticed, it also uses like mobile messenger tracking to basically stream every single police action. We think that these are examples, and these are examples in and of itself that basically argues what our opponents are trying to argue. But they also talk about how the government is going to give things like bad, like false information, which is bad for democracy, and that there's always going to be like fairness of opinions online. And I don't even want to rebut that much, because we give you characterization. We say that that is not necessarily true. Misinformation and bias and influence over others is always going to exist. But finally, a quick way with how we are going to weigh over the opening government in place. So first of all, number one, the closing government is the actually one in today's debate who actually give you a characterization of what without the policy is going to look like. Opening government provided you with a model. We provide you with how social media is going to work like in like the scenario on the opposition bench, and show you why that is inherently bad. But also we give you the example of like police operations, which is inherently the best and only way to actually solve social unrest. As my partner has explained, new governments, they think the best for the people. They have the right to protect the people, which is also kind of an emotion and was only mentioned by our side, and that we think police operations is one of the most effective ways to solve it. We are the ones to show you why that direct thing is hindered. Our, for example, opening house talk about how misinformation is spread, but they don't really necessarily tell you about how misinformation is going to hinder the, for example, solving of social unrest as a whole. Well, we show you directly how it influences the entire and only way for the government to basically solve the social unrest. And for all these reasons, ever so proud to stand on closing government. Thank you.
I'll first clarify the goal of this round. Our goal is to control the unrest and stabilize the society. And the burden of this round is that which team can better control the unrest and stabilize the society will win this round. So I will give one main question, which is which one is the best way to control the unrest and stabilize the society? Shutting down the internet or not? Our answer is not. So for government side, they got two main arguments. The first argument is they think that there will be misinformation and rumors spreads quicker than facts over the internet, and they will come over truth and make all people make all people panic, and this will promote violent actions and violence, and make it hard to control the unrest. And second, they think that with internet we can track down police actions, and then the protesters will take actions to avoid the police and to avoid the actions the police are taking. So in their world, they think that the internet brings misinformation and rumors, and this will lead to more violence, and this will lead to more violence during the unrest, and this will lead to like dealing with the police actions and make it hard to control the situation. But in our terms, we think that it's not the consequence of shutdown really matters, but the action itself. But the action of shutting down itself harms the most, because we assume that the country we're talking about the country which has democracy policies, and democracy means free conversation between peoples and governments, and shutting down all those internets means that they are limited and controlled conversation, and this will lead to the violence, the violation of democracy.
Yeah.
No, and this will cause confidence risk for government, because the citizens no longer trust the government because they violate their own democracy policies, and this will accelerating violence more. So in our world, we think that even though the internet will bring some rumors, will bring some misinformation, but it harms less than the confidence risk to the government, because in their world at least the citizens, they trust the government because they think the government but in our world, our citizens at least trust the government because they think the government is justified, it's justice, because because it did not shut down the internet and did not cut down the free conversation between citizens and the governments. But in their world, the government just shut down the internet, and this violates the democracy policy very much. And even though it can decrease the misinformation and rumors a little bit, but it lost the confidence that the citizens have to the government. And thus we think that our world is better because in our world our government is justified, and our government have the trust to the citizens to take actions to control them, and this will make the society become more controlled. And for their second argument, they think that if there are internets, okay.
Your partner just said you can still be able to talk through VPNs and there are no restrictions, but you just said as well that there would be restrictions to free speech. Aren't you just contradicting yourselves?
I think you misheard me, because I didn't say anything about restriction the internet. And what I'm talking about is without the shutting down of the internet, the government is not violating their own democracy policies. So it sends a message to the citizens that even if they are unresting, even if they are protesting against the government, at least we support democracy. We can give you freedom to talk. We can give you freedom to protest. We can give you freedom to talk about the things we can improve. So at least there are trust between government and citizens, but in your side, there are no trust because the government just shut down the internet and control citizens' conversation and violating their own democracy policies. Nope, I'll take it after my second argument. And for their second argument, you said that if there are internet, then the citizens can track down police actions and take actions to deal with the police. But actually, we didn't quite get the mechanism of it, because even if for now the internet is on, and the internet is on, but there are no but you cannot track down the actions of the troops, of the militaries, of the armies, and also you cannot track down you cannot track down the actions of the police for now. And even if you can track down, then what? The police is there to control the situation, not hiding away. So it's no use to track down the police, and you cannot track down the police even if there are internets. And after all, as we've proven that shut down the internet doesn't really matters, as the action of shutdown itself harms the most. We think that closing opposition definitely wins. Thank you.